Commend this bill to the House.
Cool. Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, the title of the Crown Minerals Amendment Act 2013 Amendment Bill speaks for itself. This is a tidy-up bill because the last bill, or now the Act, was such a mess because it did not have the requisite attention paid to it. And we are now passing an amending and tidy-up and improving piece of legislation that will have very little scrutiny at all. Certainly not the sort of scrutiny that ought to apply in a bill dealing with an issue that is so important. The primary purpose of this bill is to split the approval process over the different stages of oil and gas exploration. So, and that is approval for the health and safety, as well as the environmental aspects or the measures to be taken, first of all, for prospecting, and then the second stage is for exploration and then subsequently for production. So it's about splitting up that process. And there's then so we have the separate process after the first one for the prospecting part of it. It deals with the regime that is set up in the newly amended Act, but the reality is that that regime is already pretty light. And yet, if you have a look at the new Section 29A and look at what is required for the Minister to approve a permit in terms of the health and safety, it is, and it's subsection 2, paragraph B of the new Section 29A, it is that the Minister must be satisfied that the applicant is likely to comply with, not required to, not will, but likely to comply with and give proper effect to the work program, taking into account the applicant's technical capability, not as the Health and Safety and Employment Act would have it, which is the industry knowledge available at the time, but the very subjective test of the applicant's technical capability, the applicant's financial capability. So if it's a small company, it gets let off the hook, and then any other relevant information. And then a later subsection says that the Minister is only required to undertake a high-level preliminary assessment. That's actually a pretty light approach to health and safety and environmental safeguards when it comes to this important economic activity. And this bill now seeks to split that up and effectively to make it even lighter. And there's another aspect to it too, which is that the whole health and safety, workplace health and safety regime in this country is undergoing change. Radical change, long overdue change, but change that has been prompted first of all by the Pike River disaster and secondly by the review that this government, the previous Minister of Labour, very sensibly initiated and has seen, and we've now seen the report of. And both the Royal Commission on Pike River and the government's own Health and Safety Advisory Group have recommended radical change in health and safety. So that's all in play at the moment. And now we have this bill that is seeking to weaken an already very light regime for this industry at the permit setting process. One thing was very clear that came out of the Pike River Royal Commission, and that is that health and safety was an issue that had to be considered at the very beginning of mining and prospecting and development, not as an afterthought once production got underway. And I fear, sir, that the provision in this bill, softening an already pretty weak provision in the bill we amended just months ago, is going to make that worse. And in that respect, this bill may be seen as being somewhat premature in relation to the other health and safety changes that this government is already meant, and this minister, in fact, is meant to be managing through with his Labour hat on. But, sir, there is another issue that I think is even more compelling, another reason that is even more compelling to justify why we are opposed to this bill. And it comes out of something that the Honourable Jonathan Young said. Jonathan Young referred to some of the companies that are active, certainly in Taranaki. Schlumberger, which, with all due respect, Mr Young didn't quite get the pronunciation right. Schlumberger, Shell, Halliburton's with that well-known international reputation for good faith and ethical conduct. These are giant multinational corporations. Halliburton with a balance sheet that probably surpasses New Zealand's. And we are saying to these companies, come here, You can do your prospecting. We'll give you your permit for that. But once you've done your prospecting, don't expect to get your exploration. You have to come for a second process like that. But the reality is we know what this government is like when large multinational corporates turn up on its door and want a special deal for them. They go weak at the knees, they quiver and they give up, they roll over, they have their bellies tickled, and before you know it, the New Zealand taxpayer is shelling out hundreds of millions of dollars to prop up the multinational. That's the way they conduct themselves. That is the legacy of this tawdry, grubby little national government that we have at the moment. And I can imagine a Halliburton's turns up, probably Dick Cheney himself, an emeritus director of Halliburton's will turn up and have a cup of tea with John Key and say, oh, you gave us the permit for this bit, give us the permit for the next bit. And somehow Simon Bridges, the minister, the neophyte Minister of Energy and Labour, is meant to stand up to Dick Cheney and Halliburton's or Schlumberger or Shell and say, oh, no, we're tough here. We're tough with our regulatory regime and we're going to say no. And you can start all over again and prove that you've got the health and safety and the environmental safeguards that we demand in place. Well, the problem with that, Mr. Speaker, is it just is not credible. It is not credible given the track record of this government. When Warners came here wanting a law change sponsored by Sir Peter Jackson, what did this government do? Lay it on the limos, put on the hospitality, took them up to Premier House, wined and dined them, and gave up everything. What did they do when Sky City Casino took the Prime Minister out to dinner? That was it. Deal done. Convention Centre built, 35-year licence, and an attempt to buy Parliament and its sovereign rights. That's how disgracefully low our ethical standards now are. And now this government, this party in government, comes to this Parliament all in a heated rush as part of the budget process and says, listen, we've got the last set of amendments so wrong, we have to get the changes now. And by the way, we want to give you this, we want to make this change that gives these multinationals the opportunity to stand over us, to leverage the partial permission we've already given them in this very crucial and sensitive industry. That's what this government's asking us to do. That's what this minister wants us to do. And it is tragic, and it is wrong, and it is the reason why we're opposed to it. The oil and gas industry is a very important industry to this country and indeed to the world. And what we do, the way we manage it, is given close scrutiny from all around the world, from the operators and from others too. But it's an industry where now the industry players expect high standards of regulatory conduct, expect it, and are not fazed by it. But they will see an opportunity if they see weakness in a regulatory authority. And if they see a government demonstrating weakness, they'll be all over it. There is nothing to lose in a government that is prepared to set the highest standards of health and safety and the highest standards for environmental safeguards in this industry. But this government is going in the opposite direction. And it's a great disappointment. It is wrong. It shouldn't be happening. And that is why we'll be opposing this bill.
Dr. Jiang Yang.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for the opportunity to speak on the first reading